I want to be honest with y'all and say passability was never really my struggle. I was dark skinned. I didn't have an extremely athletic build. And being dark skinned, people don't really pay you no attention anyway. You're invisible in a nation that fetishizes fair skin. I played that to my advantage. So, child, I put on some lip gloss and some eyeliner and pushed. And I had strong examples of wholeness that kept me from ever being ashamed of who I was. I had such a great sense of community that stealth was never an option for me. And then we entered the tipping point. I don't think a lot of people understood what the tipping point was, but the tipping point was this point where trans people were being accepted at the table, but it was the trans people who could perform cisness, not just in appearance, but as a goal to identify with their ways of life and how they maneuvered to assimilate into a binary system. For about a year or two, I thought this was a win. But then I started to hear the comments that certain trans people who were passable and attractive by mainstream standard would make about other people in the trans community who were not passable, who were not mainstream attractive. And it hurt me because I realized that the win that I thought our community had was an illusion. It was a lie. I began to rebel in a way that rejected modern beauty standards. I began to rebel in a way that rejected what passability meant and what passability looked like. I was just like, that was my form of protest. I used my platform to be a different example of what it meant to be trans, what it meant to be whole, what it meant to be queer, what it meant to be black, what it meant to be indigenous, what it meant to be non binary. That's what I used my platform to do because I realized that I was becoming a part of the problem and I wasn't wrong. Because now, all these years later, after allowing those same trans people who were condemning non binary people, who were condemning people who did not fit into the binary and could not perform American or colonial standards of beauty, after all these years of supporting them as leaders and having them at the forefront, what has it gotten us? It's gotten us right back where we started from, entering an era where we're being threatened to lose our health care, where we're being threatened to lose services and resources, and being threatened to be erased from society. And I can't help but think, would these children even be in a space of feeling like they needed to have surgeries at such a young age had we allowed non-binary people, had we allowed those trans people who weren't so hung up on physical appearances and blending in, had we allowed them to lead the movement, would we have a generation of children that would be trying to start their transitions at such a young and vulnerable age before their brains even finish developing, if we had allowed the right people to guide the movement? People were calling me crazy, even though people were making fun of me, even though people were saying, oh, you got a sex change and you got hair in your face and you still look like a man and you're confused and why you running around town with face paint on. Even though people said all of that, I know now, because I wasn't the one at the forefront of the movement. I wasn't the one making the deals and getting the policies and the laws made to protect us. I wasn't a part of all of that. I stepped to the back and I worked on me and I worked on my healing and what that looked like. Because I had to heal from the lie. For a second, they had me too. While the cis-passing trans people were at the helm of the movement, and look what they bought us.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous.
Speaking of ridiculous, the whole thing, your whole administration, the whole government, throw the whole thing away. We know how this ends, blah, 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 whoop-de-whoop-de-woo, and we're here now. He's the 47th president. We're headed right back where we started from. And honestly, I think it's karma. Because when you have leaders in our movement saying things like,
all of y'all that were playing dress up, all of y'all that were playing dress up, if you're unsure, detransition. With all due respect and with all the love in my heart, if you don't pass, if you're not binary, hang it up. At least for the next 4 years, hang it up.
Telling you to go and hide like a coward. Look what they got us. Instead of being ready to fight for who you are. Facial film and all of the implants and shit that made us soft. I'm starting to think that was a setup too. I have a song, and in the song it says, we are warriors for our humanity. We got to fight. I know we got to fight. We got to hold up this freedom banner. We've got to hold it up until we thrive. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to hold up this freedom banner until we thrive. A man, a woman, lay lim, lay lur, purple ones. Rise.